right. All right, everyone. We are on episode something of the Conquer the Mind podcast. We're going completely off script today with Jolita, who is the founder of Brilliant Massage and Skincare. She's from Burlington, Vermont, and I'm from Situate, Massachusetts. So we got some fellow Northeasterners on the podcast today. So Jolita, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I know we spoke a little bit last week briefly, and we had actually met in Phoenix at the International Franchise Association. Funny enough, so how was that experience for you? Was that your first IFA?
Yes, and I'm really glad that I decided to go. I learned a lot about franchise industry as being just emerging franchisor who just recently decided to franchise my business last year. Um, and I also enrolled into their CFE program. I'm doing the Foundations of Franchising course right now, which
Mm.
me to more understand franchisee and franchisor relationship.
Hmm. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm sure that the IFA was very action packed, ton of roundtable discussions, large breakout rooms, seeing all the vendors, the franchisors, the franchisees, consultants like myself. There were so many different people there. So very interesting. So you mentioned you just decided franchising about a year ago and you were at the IFA. So how like eye opening was the IFA? I know it was my first IFA as well. So I thought it was very eye-opening as well to just see thousands and thousands of people all in. I always say the franchising industry, but people get mad saying it's not really an industry, it's a growth strategy, but more like the franchising community, if you will. How eye-opening was it in your opinion?
Um, well, it was, I would say, one of the best conferences.
Hmm.
The people are extremely supportive. Everyone that's in the franchising business, I think
Hmm.
everyone is sort of, you know, um, not necessarily all of them entrepreneurs, but a large percentage of people there are entrepreneurs. I mean, some people work in other like HR or perhaps other parts of the businesses, but and I think entrepreneurs understand each other and that help
Hmm.
us sometimes, to develop and business and deal with day operations. They'll have, future plans, goals, and not get bogged down and when things don't go your way. So I think that's what one is was so supportive, and then the education part there, it was
Hmm.
of helpful meat and potatoes information, how to do this, how to do loss,
Hmm.
for
Yeah. Yeah, it really is interesting. And I don't know, there's just so many different events going on. So I thought it was very interesting. And I always say, kind of, you always see competitors, people in the same industry that are willing to share industry secrets, best practices. So there's just so much alignment in the franchising industry. So I'm so glad that, I'm part of it. It's awesome that we were able to connect in Phoenix and now we're on the podcast. So it's always nice to connect with some other kind of young entrepreneurs kind of conquering the franchising industry. So I'd love to kind of take it back a step as like an entrepreneur. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur or where did this kind of like kickstart in your initial journey, Jolita?
Yeah, so that's a good question. um I actually, for the longest time, I did not know what it meant exactly to be an entrepreneur
Yeah.
because I grew up in Lithuania and it's kind of like post-Soviet country, um,
Hmm.
born in 1988. And, by that time, the Soviet Republic, they like dispersed and ended, but there was still like some remnants of some of the older people had the mindset they were trained, they were told by the system that being in business or being in sales is like illegal or not good, you know.
Yeah.
Things they were nationalized, national everything, communism.
Hmm.
So, but when I was already, you know, we already were free when I was going to high school. So those things were eliminated, and all the free enterprise was available. Democracy was when I was growing up. So that, you know, so that we started to get a lot of businesses from other countries and collaborate with the European Union,
Hmm.
part of European Union and NATO. So when I was growing up, you know, I saw that business is good, and my dad was he was entrepreneur himself. When he got older, he was
Hmm.
real estate sales, like clothing sales. He would go to buy like Jeeps and then bring them and sell them in my country.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so he was self-employed, and I never saw it as entrepreneur. I just kind of that he was an entrepreneur. I just always thought, well, that's his job, you know?
Yeah.
And then, as a lot of kids, like sometimes we don't want to do what our parents did. So I was thinking to pursue music because that's kind of what my side of the family wanted more so. So
Yeah.
I played classical piano for a long time, and I came to US to study music for dreams of pursuing a career. Then after several years, I realized it was extremely difficult to be like at least remotely like successful. The lifestyle of it wasn't like too appealing to me.
Hmm.
But then I went back and saw what my dad when I saw what my dad did when I was growing up, and you know, realized, well, I should be self-employed in some sort of business, and never
Hmm.
gonna be entrepreneur. Just saw like just a way to make money, and I found my passion as well. Um,
Hmm.
very passionate about health because my parents did pass away, still teenagers, both of them. So I wanted to combine both, you know, passion, what I do, and then make enough money doing it. But I
Yeah.
never thought that I was gonna be, you know, uh, trying to franchise the business, or even I had in my early 20s, um, when I started my therapy practice, think of that
Hmm.
through as I found that passion. I'm like, wow, I am, or I do really like what it all entails.
Hmm. Wow, that's awesome. So, when did you originally make the move to Vermont?
End of 2014.
Okay. So, what was that like before moving to Vermont, and what your father was doing, was that even like legal in the country at the time as you're talking about all these things, or how was he able to go about having like a sales role in a country where you're mentioning like all these things going on?
So, so thankfully, 1988, that's when I was born.
Hmm.
And he was at the time only, I think, 22 or 23 years old.
Hmm.
That's the year was when the Soviet Union fell apart,
Hmm.
became legal to go in business. So he had to do it legally. But
Yeah.
my dad's grandmother, she did go to prison for,
Hmm. Oh wow.
yeah. So so that was pretty intense for me to learn. Wow, like they're all in,
Hmm.
they couldn't do it, but that's where I get that, I guess, inspiration from.
Yeah. And what were like the results? Did he ever make it out of prison, or what was did like when the times changed at all? Was he able to make it out, or?
So my dad did not have to go to prison. His grandmother,
Okay.
because
Wow.
when he started to work at the age like 22, 23, it already became legal at that time.
Hmm.
For 1988, it was still, I still, it would police people about.
Hmm.
So, well, my grandmother, she did come out of prison, but I wasn't born back then, so I can't
Yeah.
exactly how long she was there, but I think it'd be like 5 years.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I know like I don't even remember like anything from like 20 years below that. So I can't even remember like being at that age, like seeing all those different things happen. But yeah, I think that's just really curious to see kind of like all the changes happening and then getting into like a sales role. Like I'd be curious like how society like looked on stuff like that because it was just illegal and now you're like in a sales role where, as we're kind of alluding to, you kind of have that control over your future whether you're a business owner or really a sales owner is really your own business as well. So I think that's pretty interesting. If you have like any recollection of that, that's really fascinating, I think.
Yeah, well, thankfully, I was born at the time when, it became legal, but
Yeah.
I feel bad for people that were forbidden, to pursue their dreams, entrepreneurship, or invent things. I mean, everything was had to be done through like the government.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was a long time ago, thankfully, and a lot of things have changed,
Hmm.
and we have to be grateful. That's why a lot of immigrants that come to the US sometimes from other countries, they're so hardworking because they see the opportunities here.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Just how you make it to Vermont. That's probably like a pretty big adjustment. What were like the early years like when you were in Vermont? Even just like learning English, for example, must have been like super complicated. That's my primary language, and it took me a long time to learn.
Yeah. So I was studying English while I was in high school,
Okay.
and I left Lithuania when I was 19. And actually, when I moved
Hmm.
to the US, I did not move to Vermont first. In 2007, I was in New York
Okay.
City, and then I lived a little bit in New Jersey. After a couple years, I traveled a few different states because I was still trying to pursue music. So I went uh,
Hmm.
Nashville for 6 months, was in Chicago 6 months. I was then eventually I got back to New York City, and
Yeah.
I reassessed that I actually want to do something else.
Hmm.
But adjustment period, like the first 5 years being in US, you had to like relearn the culture, and my English was not as good as it is right now. Even
Yeah.
studied in high English as a second language from starting the fourth grade. And then German, I studied starting the sixth grade.
Hmm.
So in Europe, we usually learn a lot of languages. It's kind of normal to do down there. And English is really popular language. Um, so it wasn't that difficult, but my accent was much bigger when I.
Huh, that's really interesting. And as you're like, you learn like all these different languages, like, did you always kind of see that as like an asset growing up, or did you see it like as like a disadvantage when like you first moved to the States? What was like kind of like your outlook on just when you first got started in the United States? Like, must have been a pretty big adjustment.
Well, it's definitely a benefit to
Yeah.
learn different languages and learn different cultures and travel the world. Really opens up your mind what's possible
Hmm.
and how different systems work and how all just set up. It's all made up, all these borders, these things are made up by people.
Hmm.
You really see that when you like live in one country, then live in another country. So it's
Hmm.
really education.
Yeah. Huh. What are like some of like the crazy things like when you came to the United States where you're like Why do Americans do stuff like this? Was there like a couple things that really stood out to you?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if I should mention them all.
Hey, I'm prepared for anything. Hit me with it.
Well, first I'm gonna start with a light one. Just like the language thing was like
Yeah,
expressions. Like at first I had to learn. Someone asked like, "Hey, what's up?"
yeah,
What do you mean? Like something's on the ceiling? Like what's up? You know. So like I had to learn little ways how to communicate. That's not in the books per se. Not language.
yeah,
Um, and then the other thing, that some stereotypes about Americans in Europe is not true. Uh,
mm,
there are some stereotypes, especially maybe Eastern Europe, um, and especially propaganda. I mean, in Russia, they have a lot of like anti-American stuff. You know,
yeah,
those are not true, but they want American. They want American. They like American movies and all that. But one thing was kind of sad to learn. The one thing, because when you're in Europe, you really don't know. Um, we never really got taught in history classes even about racism. You
mm,
know, each country has its own disagreements with certain ethnic groups, and it's like Israel and or Russia or Germany. There was
yeah,
always things like that. But I guess I only learned when I moved here that there was pretty big issue in the past with Black community. And there's still like remnants of that. But when you don't realize that because we don't have that in Europe,
mm,
because there was never slavery.
mm. Yeah, it's so fascinating, just like the different countries, because for a lot of people, like especially like during 2020, you see like all the news, all the headlines, and most of those people are people that live their whole life in America. But you go to all these different countries and very similar things, but like different races, different cultures. But there's literally conflicts like in all aspects of the world. It's kind of like as you alluded to, whatever your perspective is, kind of what you're shown. So I think that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Jolita.
Yeah, but overall, like I mean, overall, there is such a wide range of Americans and culture here that you can't like put one stamp on everyone.
Hmm.
There are Americans, yes, they do like fast food, but then there's Americans that maybe not really like fast food. So to say
Yeah.
like McDonald's is not the correct statement. Like from
Yeah.
overseas might think, that they really everyone loves it.
Hmm.
Or but overall, what I gathered that the fact that American, at least, they're really entrepreneurship. They're big into creativity and good at doing business and marketing. That's, I think, America's strength, and I hope like they don't lose the work ethic.
Hmm. Yeah, I think to your earlier point, like I feel like one of the worst things like people do, and it happened a lot during 2020, is like you group people in certain boxes, whether it's Democrat, Republican, white, black, Jewish, Christian, whatever it may be. Like people just don't like to be grouped into certain boxes, and then you say, well, that whole group is this way, or they think a certain way this way. Every person is like so different. Like certainly genetics plays a part, but like your environment, where you're shaped, people you surround yourself with. Like we're probably big into like the 5 people you surround yourself with, and that network is just so key into like who you become and who you develop. So I think that's really interesting. As you kind of alluded to with America valuing creativity, entrepreneurship, is this something that you see like trending downwards, or you see is still like America kind of like leading the charge as you've kind of been to all these other countries and you have a pretty good perspective on that?
I think that, I hope that, yeah, I think that it's still leading. I think
Yeah.
it's the innovations. not the manufacturing. I think China is really leading in terms of that. They just have a large population too. Um,
Yeah.
India, I think it's like behind them, catching up. But even though because we still invent, like usually even with the cars, like cars or some sort of chips, or phones, it's still computers, coming,
Yeah.
and other people copy, and maybe they do it like in a bigger scale, or they just have like a lot of production there. But still, I think we still lead that innovation, but we can't like sit on our accomplishments. I think it's important to teach the next generation to have good work.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's really important just to be able to empower the next generation and help them uplift those same skills. And I think I'm really passionate about trying to help the next generation be exposed more to entrepreneurship and business ownership. Because I would say, like, the first 21 years of my life, graduated with a fancy business degree, and it was awesome. And I'm very, very grateful for the experience. But you don't really learn any of the real world experiences and all these experiences that I'd love to dive into as you become a business owner, and like the realities of a business owner is nothing you're really prepared for in school, from balancing a checkbook to even just sales, building relationships, networking. Franchising is definitely not something mentioned in a whole lot of schools and universities. So I'd be curious, Jolita, you mentioned you had a strong interest in music. And for a lot of people, they're trying to find that passion, but it sounded like you pursued it. You were in New York, kind of like the prime of music and all of that. But how do you go from transitioning from being something you're very passionate about to transitioning to business ownership? Or was there something in between music to entrepreneurship?
Yep. So I think that sometimes I felt like all the dots fell into one place for me, because
Mm.
I will never regret the fact that I studied music and I spent time, even pursuing it, um, because it's creative, and being an entrepreneur is creative. I think that those 2 points. I think the music built my brain. It primed my a way to not be afraid to like adapt, shift, improvise, because
Mm.
you learn different. It's like a language you learn, and then you're able to compose, and improvise, and you memorize different things. So with entrepreneurship, it's a little bit like, I think it's an art form, to be a good entrepreneur. At least I see it that way.
Mm.
So I don't think it's that far. And actually, a lot of musicians are entrepreneurs. If you look at it, they are actually entrepreneurs that sell their skill.
Mm.
I mean, not all of them, but some of them. They
Yeah.
and ambassadors, or they have their own different types of businesses. So I
Mm.
think kind of, that is just, it wasn't that big for me stretch. Of course, I had to learn a lot of things as I started it. There's a lot of nuances you want to learn, like you said, like financial terms and things like that. But
Mm.
I, even though I was passionate about it, I was also very passionate about health and wellness.
Yeah.
So then, like, jumping from creative art, like music scene, to then kind of being creative entrepreneur, and then combine wellness, I think it just kind of all came together, and it didn't felt that.
Mm. Mm. That's really interesting, Jolita. And for a lot of people, for me as a younger person, I remember I always aspired to be an entrepreneur, but it was trying to figure out, like, how can you actually take those actionable steps to become a business owner? Like, not everyone, I kind of joke, has like that Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos type idea, but we still want to be a business owner. What actionable advice would you have for someone that's trying to figure it out? Do you think it kind of just it happens naturally almost as you're kind of just exploring different things, or you can like aggressively like pursue like how to be a business owner somehow?
Well, I think I mean, always, go doing it through a franchise, through someone that done it already and have a system developed could save a lot of time, like years.
Hmm.
Because it took me, I would say, like 7 or even more than, even before I actually created Brilliant Massage and Skin LLC. Well, Brilliant Massage, even before, there was years before that I experimented through other things, how to be in business for myself, because I feel that I tried, like, I tried personal training, nutrition coaching.
Hmm.
I tried to do like online thing, courses, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I failed, and that those failures then brought me to finding a winner combination for me.
Hmm.
So then that's one way that you could get into being in a business, because you're still entrepreneur, but you're just
Yeah.
supposed to be owning a franchise. You still have to do like make sure your business. You have
Hmm.
to make decisions, because franchisor is not gonna tell you every single daily step. There's gonna be things gonna be on your too.
Right.
So that's one way. Or you can invent, you can start business from scratch. I did it organically. I actually didn't loans. Maybe that's why it also took longer time. And also I was learning as I started
Hmm.
steps. It's in making a dish, like what spices do you need to add to have a good delicious dish. So some
Hmm.
experiment, okay, this is too much salt or this is too much pepper. So the business is kind of like that, where it's was a lot of testing things and
Hmm.
arriving at, yeah, this is like the best recipe.
Yeah.
Yes, and it never stops. We still do that.
Huh. That's fascinating, Jolita. I think that's a really great point. As a franchise consultant, literally speaking to so many people that literally say a lot of times in the process when they're looking at franchising and they have kind of that outside perspective, they say, why don't I just do this myself? And as someone that literally has done it herself, what do you like tell that person? Like you said, it took you like 7 years to take that business, or, how long does it actually take you to have success as a business for someone that's looking at franchise, or maybe I just start my own business, for example?
Yes, it actually takes much longer than you think. If
Hmm.
it was easy, everyone would have a successful business tomorrow, 1 year. I mean, I know some people that are very experienced business professionals that are able to make a business successful, just like within 1 year. But
Hmm.
but the fact is, because they've done it already before. And
Hmm.
but if you're new to business, you never created a business before, unless you get really lucky and you hit some sort of like a rush, um, fad thing sometimes
Yeah.
happen, which could be like a cash falling high sometimes situations. If you, unless you hit that, like the chances are is gonna take you a years. Usually, to my opinion, it takes 10 years.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And as you are in those 10 years of your journey, what are like the initial stages of, you have this idea, and how do you start to actually create a business out of it and starting the LLC, getting the paperwork done, and leading up to that first customer?
Yeah. So it starts with, I think the creating LLC is not difficult. It's actually just website, and you say I want to create LLC, and then you might talk to a lawyer, but even that is at the beginning, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Uh,
Hmm.
your liability insurance, but that's just one thing. The more difficult things are going to be developed. Like, how do we acquire customers? How do
Hmm.
people, and how many people? How do we retain customers? How do we retain employees? Like, what compensation, what supplies, and where is the location, like where's our demographic of clientele. Those are things that require more like and error sometimes for something that's new,
Hmm.
a business to figure out, because
Yeah.
marketing like systems in place, they don't know how to acquire those leads. It might take them a long time to see like a reasonable profit.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting because you think about, as I alluded to, college is not going to prepare you for any of these skills. Like getting into like some of like the more specifics of kind of the realities of a business owner. How do you even go about like figuring out like the product pricing and you know nobody really knows like the exact pricing. Do you look at competitors or how does someone, if they have a business, go about figuring out the best pricing to be competitive?
Yep. So at first, yeah, you probably would look at, what some competitors do. You would want to, um, as you're small, you probably might want to keep your prices lower when you're just beginning, just kind of get that experience and hone
Hmm.
the skills and systems, perfect everything, and then you can go up to like more median price and maybe above the market price once you become really
Hmm.
good in the services or products that you offer. But yeah, I think the rule would be to see what in your area, what is the average.
Hmm. Yeah. That's interesting. What about, as you mentioned, like potentially raising prices? Is that something like sometimes people get scared to, like maybe a franchise owner, they may get scared that their customers may react negatively. How do you go about pricing their products and then maybe increasing them? Or do you have to start being like very strategic at the start with this is my final price? Or, are different things, factors going to contribute to that?
Well, I would say as long as it's within reasonable limit, you're not raising it like 100%.
Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, it's just I think most people understand that each
Hmm.
small business especially has to keep up with inflation, and
Yeah.
people see that other prices are rising too. Uh,
Hmm.
so I think most people expect that the price is going to increase on an annual basis. Just
Yeah.
inflation, and recently we had more inflation than I've seen in my life,
Hmm.
or that I paid attention. Just like after the pandemic, we had really bad high inflation rates because it's so a lot of money was printed,
Hmm.
and and that's why like rents are going up, people mortgage rates are going up just to balance that inflation, and
Hmm.
and I can't to balance out. So I wouldn't worry too much about raising the prices as long as it's like a reasonable percentage.
Yeah.
And if someone isn't happy, then you could explain or put like a short newsletter explain. This is an annual inflation adjustment, or our, like, let's say suppliers increase the price, so we have
Hmm.
the price. Um,
Hmm.
have to pay our people more because now the grocery costs more. So unfortunately,
Hmm.
pay them. Um,
Okay.
yeah. So if the customers still like about that, I mean, we can't help. Um,
Right.
maybe they just don't value that product, and not to that or to more than find customers that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good point on having the customer. Maybe they don't value the product or service if it is that specifically dependent on the pricing. But I think that's a good point in terms of building relationships with your customers at your new business, or you're a franchise owner trying to build relationships with your customers. Do you have any like best practices on having people know like, Jolita, you're the face of the community, in Burlington, Vermont, for example. How do other like franchise owners go about making sure that they're the face of their community and people know their business and their brand?
I think it's important to attend local events as a business.
Hmm.
When I was starting my uh, practice, then hiring other people. I went a ton of networking. Like I've been a member of BNI first couple years, uh,
Okay.
which actually it's a franchise. They were at this year. Yeah, so it's like Business Network International account. They have different chapters in different neighborhoods. You can go meet other business owners and people in the area. Chamber of Commerce, local events, donating gift cards to local funders, schools, volunteering,
Hmm.
and of course, putting out your name out in the community.
Hmm.
Um, there's usually different organizations that, depending on the industry, that you can reach out and people, because even though online marketing is face to face, is always going to be the back
Hmm.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really great point. And especially with marketing, and one of the things with, clients that I work with, when they look at the royalties, then they see like a marketing fee with a potential franchise. Can you as a business owner kind of compare, you as a founder, you've invested probably a lot of money trying to figure out where those customers are, where the strongest lead generation tools are. Can you compare that with a franchise owner who may have like a 2% marketing fee, for example? Like, where is that money like actually going towards, for example? What's the best, why is that necessary for a franchise to succeed?
Yeah. Well, for example, we for our future franchisees, we want them to spend 5% of their total revenue on marketing
Hmm.
beginning. And different, like you said, for example, like 2%. I guess it really, like an example, like each industry will have different ones, but
Hmm.
where you know you have to spend that money. Just because you have customers today doesn't mean that someone won't move away. Doesn't mean the customer won't get sick and won't come back again. Because
Yeah.
you always have to market, for new leads to stay busy,
Hmm.
relevant, to stay updated, not from that area. We want people to, we want them to have the most reviews, the most customers in their town where they decide to open for
Hmm.
in massage and skin. That's what my wish goal is for
Hmm.
is is that they are the leaders, and that's why we have that marketing fund, and that's why other franchisors recommend that fee. So what you were saying, you mean that some people object and ask why there's a fee out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's for the benefit of them. It's
Hmm.
for the benefit for everyone, and growing the brand, putting the ads out there. It's just really has to be done. I know it's not fun to,
Yeah.
but if you don't spend, you don't. You have to spend.
Yeah. Hey, well, I think it's fun. I love marketing. But yeah, just like even McDonald's, you think of the yellow arch when you're driving on the highway. If that yellow arch wasn't there, they're going to lose money because people just aren't going to know where that location is. So it really doesn't matter if you're the biggest company out there or someone literally just getting started. Like, marketing is how people find you. And even when people do know you, continually staying relevant, continually staying top of mind, I think is really important. But I'd be curious, Jolita, as a business owner, a lot of people have like this fantasy of wanting to be a business owner, or maybe seeing like a CEO founder, 10, 20 years into the mission and very successful, but it's not easy as a business owner. What does that first like 6 to 12 months reality of a business owner look like? What was that day in the life looking like?
Yeah, of course, I will share day in the life, and also I wanted to add a little nugget
Yeah,
from
go for it.
previous. You know what I like to say? You gotta pay to play. So if you don't,
Oh yeah.
not gonna be playing. But anyways, so it's I'm not gonna like sugarcoat and say it's easy. You know, the
Hmm.
single day is easy being an entrepreneur. It's not. In running a business, there is gonna be some challenges where now all of a sudden everything is smooth sailing, and then one staff
Mhm.
member got sick, and now you have to rearrange the whole schedule and find replacement. You know, and then
Yeah.
had vacation planned that day, and now it's like you have to deal with this because maybe there you don't have that can, or you don't have that moment, you know, that urgent something urgent came up,
Hmm.
someone messed up, and you need to deal with it. So there's gonna be like that. I mean,
Yeah.
a business, but you know, the first year too is when you really trying to get the store, the customers, and
Hmm.
reviews, and but it's you gotta still maintain a balance, you know.
Hmm.
If you have good systems in place, you don't have to kill yourself doing it, you know.
Hmm.
For me, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's still more flexible than, at least for me personally, I enjoy it better than I would have to do from 9 to 5. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, being a business owner, yeah, you will have to sometimes tend to like some emergencies, unexpected times. Um, but if you got good system, let's say if you bought into franchise, they have a good system, or you developed your own good system, um, you have people in place to help you as well. So most
Hmm.
of the time it will be, you know, except like I said, sometimes something might be available. So it's kind of like raising, you know, it's at first as a baby where you kind of need to spend more and more time with it. Then it starts like kind of gets a life on its own when it's
Hmm.
more mature. And sometimes, yes, still will happen where you kind of have to drop it, deal with whatever's going on. But it
Hmm.
over time. First,
Yeah.
like the learning curve the most, I would say, for
Hmm.
time.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think just the realities of a business owner is like very fascinating. What was like the toughest part of the learning curve as a business owner, where something that going in just like totally unexpected, something you definitely didn't predict to maybe help that next business owner that's trying to start something?
Yeah. Well, I think the most thing I did not realize is probably HR stuff.
Okay. Yeah, HR is definitely something I feel like even just new in the last like 5 years or so, but yeah, it definitely makes day and night in an industry because the people that build an organization, that's as far as you're gonna get.
I think that's it's easy to manage people when they do everything they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Sometimes, you know, people have different views, so they come with different maybe background expectations. And so if you, so that's what I learned is important to set clear ends, because sometimes people
Hmm.
have habits from other workplaces that make work as good as your workplace.
Hmm.
Also, it's really important to set expectations. Like, let's say if you accept zero, some sort of no drama in the workplace, you know,
Yeah.
and then if you tolerate it, it's gonna grow. So it's also important to eliminate people that is not contributing the way you want them to. So when I became a owner, I had to also learn quite about how to manage people, and then they're almost like kids sometimes. kids, but if I have kids, I kind of picture that's what it's like.
Yeah, I can't comment either because I don't have kids either.
Um,
But I think that's really interesting and some really great points there. And I'm just curious, as you're a business owner trying to kind of build out a team, and you're kind of talking about managing expectations is so key, whether you're building a family or getting involved in franchising or starting a business. Managing expectations and setting clear expectations is so critical. But when things don't go according to script, you can't really prepare for those conversations necessarily. But how, as a business owner, do you go about one, commanding respect from other employees, but also like your likability index, so that you have someone that they like being around. It's not like they're scared of you, they want to respect you, but they like you, they want to be you, that version of respect, if that makes sense.
That's exactly. I think that having good work ethic and having best interest, showing that you do have best interest for them and
Yeah.
the, I mean, it's very cool. Graphic I saw the other day. Satisfied employees versus aged employees.
Hmm.
There is a difference between the two. So
Hmm.
satisfied employees is the ones that, okay, they're coasting, they're on a ship, they're coasting,
Yeah.
they're what they're supposed to do. Um, the workplace is kind of catering to them, don't really expect much of them. So that's, like they're put as a priority, right? Uh,
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily about the company's well-being. Now, engaged employees, the next level up. Engaged employees, the one not only what they're supposed to do, but they're not doing only what benefits them, only for that paycheck, but
Hmm.
they're also invested into that. Make sure they have a good team. Make sure that they keep other employees around.
Yeah.
Don't tolerate, you know, uh, bad behavior around. They report things properly to the manager or the owner. So the key is to have engaged employees, and what I learned to get engaged employees is to, well, you want to have them be happy, but also describe what is also the goal of the company, not just like
Hmm.
hired you to go home, but also like what's creating a culture where they're invested in the big goal, big picture of the future of the
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. And that's what I've heard from a lot of like successful business owners, is kind of figuring out the mission, the why statement, and making sure other employees in their organization, their mission can fit under that. But how do you like, is that like a job interview? Is that like a question where you're just like, what is your mission? What is your why? Or how do you like go about like weaving out to see if that candidate will have long-term success, under that umbrella?
company. Uh, yeah, so you get better at this. I got better at this the more people I hired. Every time you
Hmm.
learn how to read people better, and then when
Yeah.
you use resume, you can kind of see what their uh, skills are, and if that would match, and see what was their hours, what were their commitment level, kind of.
Hmm.
Um, Even though it's hard to say always 100%, you can still hope that, because there were people that I hired that I was like, I don't know if this person gonna do that well, and then they surprisingly did very well.
Hmm. Interesting.
There are sometimes people where I thought, well, they should do really well, and then they ended up not working out.
Hmm.
So sometimes you can't until someone's with you for at least several months. That's why it's good to have like a trial period, and
Hmm.
let's see if it works for both of us, you know,
Hmm.
couple months, or it for someone a full time. permanent person. But it's a tricky thing to always be able to know in advance. And then there is a certain percentage people that on that ship, like I said, the ship people coaching, and people that on a friend pulling, steering, and doing putting effort that person. So
Yeah.
then there's also sometimes you'll end up having some people that the ship on purpose.
Hmm.
Bad, but whatever reason, maybe they're jealous. Maybe they wish that they think it's easy to like be a manager and they're not a manager. They were a manager and they don't like to be told what to do. And
Hmm.
do. Those people thinking they're ship, so you gotta let those people.
Yeah. Hmm. That's awesome, Jolita. I think that's really important. Just always like evaluating the people and seeing if their mission, their culture is aligned with the overall mission, the why statement of their culture. And yeah, just continually evaluating that. And I know our time's like kind of winding up at this point. I'm sure you probably have to go at this point. But I guess one,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
But yeah, we I think we have like maybe 6 minutes. It will be 1 hour, but yeah.
Yeah,
If
no, this is awesome.
any anything I guess so yeah, like you said, performance review, then you review that person maybe every 6 months. Some companies do it once a year. We're gonna be doing 6 months now. um but it and um it's gonna happen sometimes. It's unreasonable to expect.
Hmm.
Like anyone would be much happier, and I'm much happier when I expect that I know something will go wrong sometimes, and I'm okay with it. So being in business, you have to have that expectation, or even working for someone else, that grass is not greener somewhere else, and you like the work you put in is gonna make it grow, not like jumping the ship.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's really powerful. And just one final way to kind of end the podcast being conquer the mind. And really, if you can conquer the mind, you can really conquer anything in this world. But what has your mindset been as an entrepreneur to conquer entrepreneurship, to successfully own locations as a business owner? And now you're taking the proper steps to franchise that business. What has been your mindset and going through the ups, the downs? What has like the consistency been in that mindset?
Mental strength.
Hmm.
And I've been studying more stoicism. Actually, I'm
Hmm.
a fan of stoic philosophy, that don't react too fast, don't engage into any like negativity, and sometimes bad things that happen end up being good things.
Hmm.
So we shouldn't get too upset or too happy over any losses or any wins, because maybe it was meant to be that way. So I kind of look at life like that. And after my parents passed away, I
Hmm.
saw how short life can be, and sometimes it's not worth it to get upset over money. And oftentimes it's not worth it. And with the business, you just have to not give up. You have to
Hmm.
keep going and have that energy and find the reason why you're doing it. Because money alone is not gonna be motivating enough.
Hmm.
Have some sort of, you want to leave a legacy. You
Hmm.
want to help the community. Maybe I'm personally passionate about helping women. I like more women to be
Hmm.
as well and help them through franchise.
Wow. That's awesome, Jolita. I think that's a fantastic way to wrap up the podcast. And yeah, it's just so important to have those values and that mission because you need to be goal oriented and have goals. But once you reach that goal, then you're kind of just looking for that next goal. Whereas when you have those mission, you're always constantly working towards something rather than just finding out where the next thing is, then realizing it's not as, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, as you alluded to. So thank you everyone for tuning in to the Conquer the Mind podcast. If you found value, like, share, comment, subscribe, help out the algorithm. But Jolita, thank you so much for your time today. I had a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a brilliant day.